Hello again, everybody. This is John and Glenn with BestPriceNutrition.com. Today we're going to talk to you guys about Satiereal Saffron extract. That is the trademark version of the saffron extract. And saffron is a plant. It's a spice, actually, and it's been used traditionally in Persian medicine for anxiety, insomnia, things like that. It's also a spice. It's a well-renowned spice, and it's all cultivated by hand. It takes about 75,000 saffron blossoms to equate to a pound of saffron spice, so it's a very, very expensive spice. So that actually drives up the price of it. So that's some of the traditional uses of it. Now, specifically lately, Dr. Oz talked about it, Glenn, and what did he say about it?
Yeah, he mentioned that it can reduce hunger, I should say, or cravings in between meals, and I think that's why this company, the product we sell, the Rebody, they call it Hunger Caps. So it can reduce hunger, reduce cravings, and specifically through compulsive eating.
Yeah, there's been a lot of research in that area, and the Satiereal is the trademark form of it that has been talked about specifically, and that's where all the research has been done on it. In terms of determining what the mechanism of action is in terms of what it does. And specifically what they've found out is that the same biochemical pathways that affect drug addiction, they think also explain food addiction as well. And what it is it has to do with serotonin levels. Some people have a gene, I guess, where they do not produce serotonin as well, or they just don't absorb it as well. So hence they take things like Prozac and other SSRIs, which are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, which basically means it keeps serotonin in the synaptic cleft for your postsynaptic cleft to absorb it. So in other words, it makes you happier, makes you feel better is kind of the idea. The downside to the drugs, the SSRIs, is that number one is there's no great way to diagnose somebody with having this issue. That's one of the issues with the brain. So it's not like people who maybe just be having a down time end up on these and then they want to come off of them, but to come off of them is quite a challenge because you can get worse depression, you can have suicidal thoughts and things like that. So there's a lot of side effects with these drugs. So once they figured out what the biochemical pathway is that saffron was affecting, they said, oh, okay, well, let's do some more research and see if we could find an alternative to these that does not have those side effects.
Yeah, so a lot of the original research done was for mood and depression, and that led into this, the research into hunger and eating, because they found that people who had the low serotonin levels, they tend to eat more or eat compulsively. And what they were saying is I think 30% of overweight people were considered compulsive eaters or ate compulsively, so that's what they're targeting with this.
Yeah, and it was in 2010 specifically that there was a French study. Basically what they did is they compared how, the eating habits, but they also were comparing it to Prozac. And they found that saffron produced no side effects while the antidepressant produced a familiar list of adverse effects, dry mouth, sedation, things like that. And then Dutch researchers were the ones that found out that there were some people lacking the gene responsible for low levels of serotonin. So there's some pretty interesting evidence. There's a lot of studies here we have compiled on humans, so we're just trying to summarize them for you guys. It demonstrated efficacy in managing mild to moderate depression and anxiety in humans. And these are the same moods that drive emotional eating, basically. When you're depressed, when you don't feel good. And you even see that in a lot of fat burners now. They're using chocamine, the form of chocolate that's thought to help enhance the mood, because if you feel good, the idea is that you're less likely to binge eat or eat bad. Because you feel good. Sometimes to make themselves feel good, it appears that some people tend to binge eat.
Exactly, and a lot of times when you're dieting and things like that, you're not going to feel the best because you're not intaking all these calories. So, like John had mentioned, in a lot of the fat burners, you'll see those feel-good ingredients added to it.
Yeah, the French study we referred to was a team of French researchers. What they did was they took a group of healthy to slightly overweight women. They were, middle-aged, and the results were pretty modest. They basically lost about 3.6 pounds, those of which that took the saffron extract, and almost all of it fat weight, and that was after 4 weeks. So then they said, all right, well, let's go and do another study. So they took those findings and they expanded upon them, and they launched a full-scale study. It's about 60 overweight women between 25 and 45 years old, but this time they focused on the frequency of anxiety-related between meal, after dinner snacking, more of that binge-type eating, and their goal was to test to see how saffron affected your mood. And the potential to help reduce anxiety, which is the root cause that they believe of this compulsive eating. And I think what they're finding too is that it affects people in different levels. Some people are more likely to eat more, not only in quantity of food, but more frequently have this happen. In some people, it's a little less frequent, but it tends to happen. So once again, they had some weight loss, which was pretty moderate. To the 2-week mark, people in the placebo group, they actually gained a little bit of weight, but by 8 weeks, the average weight loss had increased, reaching just about 2 pounds, with 26% of subjects losing up to 11 pounds. And the women taking saffron saw a significant reduction in thigh body fat, basically. The thigh circumference was where they lost most of the weight. So it's about 11 pounds over the course of 8 weeks. So that's pretty impressive. And they think it was the psychological effect reported from the saffron group that was the most compelling. And especially when they talked about the women who were in this study, they were very susceptible to this binge eating. And when the ones that were on the saffron versus the placebo group were much less likely to participate in this binge eating, and hence they lost more weight. So that's an interesting
Yeah, it helped them
finding.
control the amount of calories they're eating in between meals.
Yeah, at a baseline, the women in both groups had reported about an average of 12 snacking episodes per week. After 8 weeks, the average was just 6 episodes per week in the saffron group, basically a 50% reduction. So they were able to cut down on those meals. So these results basically validated what the hypothesis was, that the link between these same mechanisms that control drug addiction also can control, as they call it, food addiction, and that leads to this compulsive eating, is that saffron has an effect, and it really all starts, the base of it is at your mood. If you can control and you can increase your body's ability to use serotonin and increase serotonin levels without side effects. I think that's what's really important, is some people come off SSRIs, Lexapro, Prozac, what have you, and they did studies, right up against these drugs and found, similar results in terms of being able to increase mood, is that you come off of those, there's a lot of down regulation that goes on. So when you come off of those and you peel your body back, your body's just not as efficient at using serotonin, hence you get these suicidal thoughts, this darkness, and the brain is really not something to mess with. I mean, it's something that we're still learning so much about in the scientific community, that it's really difficult to put somebody on those and say, "Oh, come off of those." So, and in my opinion, I think too many people are on them.
Yeah.
There's some people who obviously are clinically depressed and need it, but I think some people are put on them a little too quick, and they could just be having a bad period of time, and they'd be much better off working through it. But now there's something out there that may be effective, and that's something like saffron. And the fringe benefit really is that it'll help with these binge eating. So
yeah, a lot of weight gain can be contributed to binge eating or just mood eating. You have a bad day, at the end of the day you go home and just eat everything in sight. And a lot of losing weight can be controlling that, and this may give you an advantage over that.
And there's varying degrees of it, like we talked about, and we talked in another video. One of the things that's out there is the myth of the high versus slow metabolism. That is an absolute myth. There are some people who have a slow metabolism, but it's rare and it's diagnosed. You probably have some kind of a thyroid condition, but for most people, what it boils down to is if you're heavier, your metabolism is actually higher. So let's say I was 300 pounds and another person was 180 pounds. We were the same height and we had to walk up a flight of stairs. Well, the person that's 300 pounds has to expend a lot more energy to get 300 pounds up that flight of stairs than I do. Hence, their metabolism is going to be higher at that time, and their metabolism has to be higher to support their system. The issue is that they've found at the Mayo Clinic, actually, there's a lot of really interesting research, is that people who are overweight or quote-unquote think they have a slow metabolism, really what it is one, they underreport what they actually eat. And they say, well, my friend eats everything they want and they're thin. That's not the case. If you actually look at the quantity of what those thinner people eat, it's a lot less, and they tend to be busybodies. And it's as simple as they don't sit down as much. I want to say it was about a couple hours a day is what it averaged out to, where people were standing more. You burn more calories when you stand versus you sit. And when you extrapolate that out over a course of a year, I want to say it was like 15 pounds. That was a different video we did, but that adds up over the years. So that plays a role too in weight gain and weight loss. Is just being a little bit more of a busybody, make the effort to stand up more. For some people, they were saying it's psychological, where the need to sit down more. I wonder if it's maybe this mood enhancement. Maybe you want to stand up more if you're in a good mood.
You
I wonder
feel better, yeah. Maybe
something
you want to
to
get up
that.
and move around.
Maybe that's the gene that the Dutch researchers are, finding that there's some people have a gene where they have lower levels of serotonin by nature, and then maybe they're the ones who want to sit down more, hence they weigh more, and then you get the whole domino effect. I don't know that. I'm putting together some things that haven't been researched, but it'd be interesting to see if that could come together. These are separate studies that suggest different things, but it would be interesting to see that. So who can take this one?
Anybody, basically.
It It's not gender
It's
specific.
not gender specific. A lot of the studies were done on women, but it's non-gender specific. Males can take this without any side effects. There's no known side effects that we've been able to find.
And women are a little more open to admitting, hey, I'm depressed than men. I think that might be part of it too. Whereas
Yeah,
a man might, well, I can handle it myself, so that tends to be something there. Can it be taken with other stuff? Yeah, it's a non-stimulant, so, right?
Yeah, it can be taken with some of the other items that Dr. Oz had mentioned without any counterindications or counteractions at all. And then, like John said, it's a non-stimulant, so...
Yeah, those are 7-keto DHEA, Relora, those are other products that he had mentioned. Coleus, Forscoli, those are things you can take with that work, raspberry ketones, that work off different mechanisms of actions. We have separate videos on those that explain how those work. If you are on some kind of an SSRI or other drug, it's always best to double check with your physician, before taking something like this that has a similar mechanism of action in that it's affecting serotonin. But in any case, we're not physicians, so we're not able to recommend that. Based on what the researchers said, there's no side effects, but it's always best to double check. That's just as a rule of thumb. The side effects we talked about, there's none known. So when to take it, it's basically, 88.25 milligrams?
Yeah, that's what's in one capsule here. You would take one capsule twice per day.
So morning and then, evening time would be a good time to take it? Okay. So I think we covered everything on there. Like we said, there's a lot of research that's been compiled on this, so it's pretty interesting. A lot of it's been done in rats, but there is some human evidence that we did touch on, which is good. Usually it starts in rodents and then it works its way to humans. And we like to see solid human evidence before we say, oh yeah, something works. So this looks really, really promising based on what's out there. What is the cost of a product like this? It ranges from,
I would say, $25 to $30, right around that range.
Right in that range. So that's something to consider as well. So it seems pretty interesting. Some of the stuff that's come out on the Dr. Oz show we found to be a little bit hyperbolic based on what the actual evidence is, but this one looks really promising. I would say that this is a little bit better in that regard. So if you guys have any questions, please post them in the comment section of the video or the blog. We're happy to answer them. Also, you can check us out at facebook.com/bestpricenutrition. We really appreciate you watching, and thank you.
Thank you.